There we go. Yes.
All right.
Yes, you were sideways there for a moment.
Hopefully I'm right way up now.
Right way up now. Yes. Yes. This crazy tipsy-turvy, topsy-tipsy Saha world.
Yes.
Namo Mibutsu. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's been a while.
Nice.
It's been a couple of weeks.
It has, yes. Let me just turn the volume up here. I can't hear you very well. One sec. There we go.
Oh, I've got it.
And I should probably actually, I'll be all right, I think, power-wise. Anyways, at some point I might have to plug in. I'm trying to not have it plugged in all the time. This is my brand new MSI Katana laptop.
Oh, okay, awesome. Cool.
Proper gaming laptop. So
the video is very nice.
Is it? Sure. Does it? Yeah, it's a good quality. I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Good.
It's really smooth compared to your previous what you were using, I think.
Yeah, I was just on my iPhone, or I'm sorry, iPad.
Yeah.
Most of the time, maybe once or twice, I did it from my iPhone when we did our dialogue sessions. But yeah, so
very nice. All right, so shall we dive into it?
Yes, we shall.
The doubts, the questions.
Yes, there is one that's recurring that seems to be persisting.
So should we go straight to that, and then, because I think that's like the main.
Well, there's two things, right? We haven't ever come back to my answer, my question that you took to Kobai Sensei about sort of did the ultimate Buddha of Kuan the original Buddha.
Yeah,
it's already project, the ultimate wisdom, the ultimate compassion, already projecting the light, but we couldn't see it. We ordinary bamboo couldn't see it. So okay, I've got to become Dharmakara Bodhisattva, or become the king, become the Kastriya king, become the king, and then eventually become a monk, and then become Dharmakara, and then become Amida 10 kalpas ago, so that we could actually get it. that kind of, that was my question. Is that what the implications of Amida is actually the original Buddha?
Yeah.
The eternal Buddha, the Adi Buddha, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Anyway. So there's that question we never came back to, I don't think.
No. And I did ask Kobai Sensei that question.
Yeah.
So maybe we should go, start there.
There's that one. And then the persistent doubt that keeps coming up is my basic. Okay. The whole, and this is, we've talked about it before, but this one keeps recurring, and it's kind of related to the Buddhism's problem of the Buddhist equivalent of the problem of evil. The Buddhist equivalent of the problem of ignorance. I call it the problem of ignorance.
Oh, good one.
Problem of delusion, the problem of karma in the first place.
So which one do you want to start with? One or
how do we get to if I'm part of it kind of is related, I suppose, in a broader cosmological way to my other question. But if we were originally Buddha nature, if everything was originally, quote unquote, originally Buddha nature, how, and it's perfect in the highest ultimate awakened consciousness, nirvana, and the sunyata, just suchness, perfect Buddha nature, how did we, how did something like that, so perfect, become ignorant of its, and go and become and the
Mm,
subtle, that, even that very beginning we're talking, that where, that subtle, like, attraction to something
mm,
other than the ultimate reality, I suppose. But, like, how did we get, if it's perfect, how did we get samsara? If nirvana,
yes.
how come samsara, basically? And then that other skeptical thing comes in and says, okay, I know, because I can't get my head around this, because I'm a bamboo, because I'm an ordinary being, because I'm calculating, because yada yada yada. But then the other skeptical thing comes in and says, well, isn't that a convenient way to stop the question?
Mm,
Oh, you're just an ignorant being, so you can't understand such a lofty and question that's beyond your realm of consciousness. So it's that skeptic
mm,
mind coming in, that skeptic mind state, saying, isn't that convenient, isn't that,
mm,
and it, that's what it comes down to. All the, I think all the skepticism, if you push everything else aside, it's that's the kernel of doubt. That's the main one, because it all goes
yeah.
back to that. I can't get past that one.
Mm,
When I think of it, I go, oh, I can't leave it alone, or I can't, the
mm,
monkeys want to pick that one up and throw it around, and you know
yeah.
yeah. um uh and I don't think about it for very long, but it's there, niggling. I don't really dwell on it, because I know there's not,
Mm.
I've already, you've already been down that road, Neo. You know exactly where it leads. um so I don't kind of go in there and try to think about it. I just go, yep,
Mm,
there's that doubt. Not much I can do with it, not much I can do to combat it. And
mm,
even the things that I would normally do to combat it, I go, well, yeah, that's convenient. Oh yeah, I'm just a bamboo. It's just my monkey mind. It's calculation. But that's a convenient way to have that question
avoid
avoided. Yeah.
addressing the
Yeah. So that's a tough one. That one is still, and then
yeah.
that's the whole doubt. You know, that it's a reverse of the other doubt. If I doubt Amida and Pure Land and the vow, that goes all the way back through all the Buddhas. I doubt everything. I see that now. But this is
Mm,
from the other direction. If I doubt that end, I everything else I'm going to doubt that proceeds from it. If
mm,
I go back all the way to that point, if I doubt that, then I doubt everything as well. So it's kind of either end. It's that's the big doubt. Anyway,
mhm.
there you go. So
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a big I honestly don't know that I am qualified to give
tackle that
an
one.
answer, a
Okay.
definitive answer to this question. I too have had questions, things that I wonder about. You could call them doubts, questions about you know, is the universe eternal or not? Does it have a beginning or not? All those questions that the Buddha lists
The
as being
14,
questions that
the
that
14
are
unanswered.
irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and that he
unanswerable. So
and that he didn't give an answer to, not necessarily because he was agnostic about it. Like it's
no.
not necessarily because he didn't have an answer, but it's because the answer couldn't necessarily be comprehended by a
Yeah.
being who isn't already
Yeah.
enlightened.
Yeah.
And also because the whole point and purpose of Buddhism is ultimately soteriological, right? To use a long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get the arrow out, yes.
Get the arrow out.
To use a more graphic and memorable image. The point of Buddhism is, and that analogy, it really does come back to, here's this wounded man laying on the ground. He has an arrow, he's bleeding out. And the Buddha, the way he tells that story, he says the man starts asking, well, who shot me? And what kind of bow did he use? And, all of these questions.
Yep.
And it's like, you're on the ground, you're in pain, you have an arrow in you. And our minds, we start asking all of these questions that don't have to do with the problem of suffering and the solution to the problem of suffering. And the solution to the problem of suffering, we don't have to be told that life is suffering, I mean, this is the first noble truth, right? This is what the Buddha observed, and this was what sent him on his quest, to find the solution to this problem, right? So Buddhism begins with, and in fact, even before, in the story of the Buddha, the Buddha's life, there's this image when he was quite young, and he was probably maybe even still a child at that point. In fact, I think according to the retelling, but he was under the shade of a tree, and he was watching the field workers plowing the field. Have you heard this story?
I think so.
Probably. It's quite
please,
famous.
But please continue with it.
And they're plowing the field, and he realizes that in the process of plowing the field, they are killing insects and creatures that are living in the ground. And this realization kind of like hits him, the prince, he was at that time a prince, right? Really deeply affects him. And this is when he kind of first encounters this, and this was before, the famous story where he goes out of the palace, and meets the sick man, and then the old man, and then the monk. This was before that. So this was when he was still just a young boy. But reflecting on that, get really, deeply, that was like his first encounter with the problem of suffering, and he realized that in order to live, we are actually, we have to plow the field, grow crops, take, the lives of these beings, and so on. And I think at that point, under that tree, he actually went into meditation. He started to meditate, and he reached like some level of meditation. Yeah, samadhi. And that was actually, the sort of I think the way the story is told in the sutra, in the accounts of the Buddha's life, that was really the turning point, the thing that set him toward finding the solution to the problem of suffering.
Was that in the Nirmanakaya lifetime that we know him as?
Yes. This
wasn't Jakata Tales. This wasn't a previous.
This is not a Jakata tale. This is in the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. So our world, our historical, Gautama Buddha,
that's what I mean,
the son of the king, yeah. And so, again, problem, suffering. And the Buddha, because he was the Buddha, it wasn't just his own suffering. He was deeply disturbed and moved by the suffering of others, of other beings, even these little insects and beings that were crawling around in the soil. As the Bodhisattva, the being on the path to Buddhahood, he was moved by this, and he couldn't be happy if there were other beings who were suffering. And this is the whole, this is the core, not just of Buddhism, of all Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. It's all, it all starts in this, here. So suffering, and then the way, the solution, the way out of suffering, the escape from suffering, we call what we could call liberation or salvation. And not just for me personally, it's, but for all beings. When the Buddha finally decided to leave behind his palace life and leave behind his wife, who he had just married, and leave behind his young son, Rahula, he said to his companion, his servant who went with him, I am going out to find the cure, for suffering, not just for myself, but for all beings. So this is like, the greatest possible, sometimes the Buddha's life is kind of presented as like a heroic story, a sort of like, if about the Campbellian myth of the hero's journey, he goes out and he has to bring something back and so on. And so if you're looking at it in that kind of the archetypal, terms, this is where Shakyamuni is going forth as a hero, really, to find the cure.
The quest.
And at that point, and at that point, and that's where he cuts off his hair.
Cuts the hair and sends the horse back.
Sends the horse back.
He's wearing white, isn't he? He's wearing white at that point. That all means I'm gone. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the household. I'm leaving the world behind. Anyway,
and he didn't even know at that point where, well, I mean, of course he knew, because from a Mahayana point of view, this is all a play, right? But from our perspective, at that point, he knew that he was going to find the solution to suffering, but he didn't know what form that journey would take. And then so he goes out, he meets monks, and he joins one of the early, at that time there were many bands of communities of people who were leaving behind household life and going out to live in the forest and meditate. And of course the story is, from there he experiments with he hears all kinds of teachers, and then what ends up happening is he ends up being smarter than the teacher that everybody is. And I think in some stories, the teacher says, well, you should just be our leader now, because you're way beyond what I've realized. So, the Buddha, he had already reached this kind of stage of spiritual attainment that was amazing, considering that he hadn't even practiced for that, for years and years in the forest, and that's because of who he was, the eternal Buddha, right? And according to Ziken Inagaki sensei, achieving enlightenment is like so difficult. It's like impossible to you and me. I mean, to ordinary, Bombu, it's just, it can't be done practically, And so for Shakyamuni to have achieved enlightenment, he could only do this because he was the Kuon Jojitsu Buddha, the eternal Buddha, coming to our world. So I don't want to, recap the entire story of the Buddha's life, but I do want to say that the question, even though I don't know if I can give you a satisfactory answer
first of all, that's always a worthwhile thing. I don't mind ever recapping the Buddha's life. That's it's always a worthwhile thing to hear. Anyway, but
for sure.
Please continue.
Well, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is because we always have to be reminding ourselves this path, the Buddha Dharma, is about the problem and the solution, suffering, and the end of suffering. And why do we suffer? It's because we do not see things as they truly are. Things as they truly are, that's nirvana, ichinyo, suchness, thusness, the true reality. And the solution to that suffering is to become a Buddha, an awakened person who sees things as they truly are, who sees the true reality, for whom nirvana and samsara are not opposed, And so we do have to, I think, remind ourselves, especially in those of us who are coming to Buddhism from a Western sort of philosophical, always have to, question the questions kind of point of view. And that's, Buddhism, of course, has a great philosophical tradition. I mean, Nagarjuna was, talk about questioning the questions. I mean, he, just totally looked into all of that. But there's always the purpose is liberation, and to be freed from the three poisons, bonno, our blind passions. The three poisons, of course, are greed, anger, and ignorance. And those are the things that, lead us to do things that cause us and others to suffer, right? Because of our, deluded view, both of ourselves and of the world. It's all that we have from the earliest age. Now, what is the origin of the three poisons and ignorance, which I think is your question?
Kind of comes back to it comes. This all ties into that, But anyway,
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question, and it's a question that I might have to do a little bit of, research to find something, especially in our tradition, that is related to this. A couple of passages from Shinran's Wasan do come to mind, but I want to check and make sure that they're really relevant.
Okay.
But maybe in a future session we can come back to this, and then I'll. Now, with regard to your question that you wanted me to ask,
because it kind of ties in here too,
because it does tie in.
We've been that's come up in this part of the discussion too. The original eternal, Kunganjo Buddha. Am I saying that right? Buddha of Kunganjo.
I think it's Kuon. I better check really quick, but I think it's Kuon Jitsu Jo.
Oh, okay.
And that means it's Kuon Jitsu Jo, which basically means the Buddha in the distant, immeasurable past, the Buddha who realized or fulfilled right enlightenment. So yeah, we say Kuon Jitsujo Buddha, right? So the eternal Buddha basically is sometimes how it's rendered in English. And Shinran, well, not just Shinran, but Kuon Jitsujo Amida Butsu, meaning the Amida Buddha who attained enlightenment in the distant or eternal past. And even though it says here, although in the sutras, it says that Amida became a Buddha 10 kalpas ago. In reality, in the unlimited, eternal, inconceivable past, he already attained enlightenment. Yeah. And this is, I think, the answer to your question. But Kobai Sensei says, you know, Shinran regarded Shakyamuni as the manifestation of Amida. And Amida, of course, in the sutra attained enlightenment 10 kalpas ago. But Shinran also says in the Wasan that the Dharma, the wheel of light of the Dharma bodies without bound, shining on the blind and ignorant of the world. And he says that although it's said in the sutra that Amida attained Buddhahood 10 kalpas ago, he seems to be a Buddha far, far older. And he says that in a Wasan. And what that is pointing to is, yes, we can say that Amida as the eternal Buddha is eternally has existed way before, even before taking form as Hozo Bosatsu, as Dharmakara Bodhisattva. And that really the reason he took form as Dharmakara was to make his vows and to fulfill his vows, the vow, so that that could be a liberating force, a power for our awakening. Because in our temporal realm, you know, there has to be cause and effect, right? In the realm of the eternal of nirvana, you know, that just transcends our cause and effects, you know, world. But in order for the Buddha to work in this world, he has to use cause and effect. In other words, he has to use the rules of this world in order to save people, right? Yeah. So the explanation that I have heard is that is why the eternal Buddha, Amida, became Hozo Bosatsu, became Dharmakara in order to make his vow, establish his vow, and then fulfill the vows through his interminably long practice in order to basically make the vow power, the power of his vow, effective to liberate us through the Nimbutsu, through Namo Amida Butsu. And also, we talk about the fulfillment of the 11th and 12th vow, which is the vow of infinite life and the vow of infinite light. And with those vows, and also the vow that all Buddhas say the name, the 17th vow. So in other words, creating the fulfilled Amida Buddha, which is the light, which is the light of wisdom, life, which according to Kobai Sensei, you know, is emblematic or symbolizes compassion. So the Buddha of unlimited wisdom and compassion, that name, so that we can hear the name, is being broadcast, throughout all existence.
In a form
So
we can actually hear it and
yeah,
receive
yeah,
it.
yeah. In Amida, this is what is something unique to Jodo Shinshu and Pure Land Buddhism is um, Amida actually vowing to become his name, to become the name, and to be heard by all beings. This is kind of different from if you read the vows of other Buddhas, like the Medicine Buddha, for example, or other Buddhas that have vows. This is a very unique vow, really, and way of saving beings, because we don't have to do anything except hear. And that's why, of course, Chomo,
hear and receive.
Listening. Listening is so important.
Hear and receive, it's the same thing. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah. To truly hear is to awaken Shinjin. There's no, the true hearing, right? True hearing without doubt, that itself is Shinjin. It's not that we hear and then we think about it and then we say, okay, I'm gonna believe that. Seems legit. It's not a process, a cognitive process that we, it's spontaneous. It's spontaneous.
Yeah.
We encounter the truth that is contained in the Dharma, Namo Amida Butsu, the origin of the vow and its fulfillment, that working as we hear it without doubt, that is itself Shinjin. So there are no what is it called? Requirements. There are no requirements that have to be fulfilled in the vow. It's all beings, as they hear my name and awaken even one thought of joyful faith, will be born in my land. So there's no, other Buddhas. In fact, I was just listening to a presentation by Abe Sensei, who's a teacher here in Japan. I've attended his lectures too in the past. And he said that, Amida is the only Buddha whose vow has no stipulations or like conditions. That's the word I was looking for. No conditions. It's unconditional.
Yep.
There's nothing we have to do. There's not a list of things. Well, if beings do this and think this and say this, then they can be born in my land. There's no other Buddha's vows do have conditions like that.
Yeah, they have to achieve certain things or do certain practices or do certain paramitas or precepts or samadhis or combination thereof or whatever. Yeah.
But Amida is the only Buddha whose original vow, the 18th vow, has no conditions.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you read the English translation, you might get the feeling or the impression that it is conditions, because it's kind of like, well, if beings, sincerely wish to be born in my land and say the name and so on.
But that all comes from Amida.
Right. That's, as Shinran Shonin shows in Kyogyo Shinsho.
Yeah.
That's all being directed to us. That's why it's called, the Nimbutsu is called Tariki Eiko no Nimbutsu. So the Nimbutsu of other power that is being directed to us. Eiko means, transference of merit, directing of virtue. So like Shinran says, I'm just a shameful, ignorant man who can't awaken a true and real mind. But because Amida's name is being broadcast throughout the 10 directions, it reaches even my impenetrable heart.
Yeah.
Shinran Shonin says that in one of his hymns.
Yeah.
That's my translation or remembering of it. I don't have it right now, but
it's go ahead. Yeah.
No, so just like you said, it's coming from
like
Amita's side.
Yeah, so it's like I said this at our Dharma study the other day with the guys that have a Dharma study with. It's like Amita has reversed engineered all of Buddhism. He's kind of flipped it, you know. Kind of, you know. So the traditional thing is you do you get the teaching, take that in, you're listening to teaching, you're studying to get that teaching, to get it right, and then as you're getting teaching, you also start to put it into practice. You're practicing that, you're trying to, and you're getting that, and then at certain times in the process of both of those, you start to have realization, of things, and and you're continuing to have the teaching and doing the practice and having realizations, and that, and then eventually the ideas in some lifetime over, either your present one or in, some, countless lifetimes in the future, you actually achieve enlightenment, realize Buddha nature, achieve the Buddha state, etc. And whereas, and you have the Buddha mind. So, but Amita does it the other way around. He gives us, Buddhism actually starts with the Buddha mind, and he gives that to us through his realization, his practice, and through his teaching, the reverse direction.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great way of expressing it.
So, and I'd seen that before, but where that really crystallized for me was a combination of things. Remember that time we were reading a few sessions ago, and I said it leapt off the page, that whole thing, where in the Kyogo Shinsho, where he talks about the teaching, the practice, and then it's none other than the Buddha mind, and you know what I mean. Shinjin is none other than the Buddha mind, or something like that. But anyway, so that combination of that, and then I was listening to Reverend Dr. Matsumoto's lecture on Shinjin, the 2-part lecture. He talks about that, and he gives like a little chart that shows here's the traditional direction, and then he shows the Amida direction. And I was like, that's it. It's literally the reversed direction of Buddhism. It's like, what is that in electricity, where you reverse the current?
Reverse polarity?
Reverse polarity, yes. That's like something to do with polarity, or and that's reversing the pole, like the polar shift I was thinking of, but then that's it. That's what it was. It's reversing the reverse polarity. That's what he's done. He's just taken Buddhism and went, it's actually this. Here you go. This is actually what it always was. But we have to reach everybody's karma, so we have all these other Buddhas and practices, and everyone's got, so we got to reach you somehow, but most of you
that is a great image. I love that
is
analogy.
Buddhism. This is and I think of it too, like it's kind of like the reverse of the Tibetan Vajrayana practice of the deity, the Buddha practice, where they see the Buddha, they visualize the Buddha in front of them, they see the Buddha in front of them, and then they gradually see every aspect of it in this kind of meditation practice, and then they see it move toward them, and then kind of meld into them, and they literally become the Buddha, the mind. They become the Buddha. Whereas with Amida, it's the reverse of that. Amida sees us and projects his mind to us and
Yeah.
envelops
Yeah.
us in his mind.
Oh,
you,
wow.
you
Yeah,
see
that
what I
is
mean?
great.
That
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just hit me. I
That
was like,
is,
it's exactly the reverse
yeah,
direction of that,
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
practice. Anyway, yeah.
Amazing. That's great. And the Buddha's mind, Amida's mind, that is sincere mind in the vow. So the Shishin Shingyo Yokusho, the
Yeah.
Shishin is Amida's mind. And
Yeah.
Shinran says, I don't have a sincere mind. I mean, you might have some sincerity once in a while, but the sincerity that we're talking about with regard to the Buddha is on a whole nother, not just level. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's
it's on another plane.
it's
And so,
something else.
yeah.
So
And so this
something
is
is
Amida's
doing, we
mind.
don't know what. Anyway,
Exactly.
yeah.
And when this mind, Amida gives this mind to us, and that is Shingyo, that is Shinjin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's a great analogy. I love it.
And that's what it's so much, that's why there's so much more
Mm,
the depth and breadth of meaning,
yeah.
in Shinjin. You know,
Yes.
yeah, it's simple faith, but it's so much, it's so
It's
many
so,
other,
yeah, so
and
much
it's
more.
a mind-blowing thing. It's not like there's this thing where there's this
Mm,
oversimplification, I think, that happens
yeah.
within certain circles or certain, you know, well-meaning
Mm,
people, that they want to explain it in a very simplified way, which
mm,
is, we need, yes, it's, the teaching needs to be accessible, and you know
mm.
but I think it gets over simplified to where it's simple faith, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
I
You
can't
can't just
just
stop there, because a lot of people will misunderstand what that means.
yeah,
It's the problem
yeah,
is simple faith to Westerners raised in a very different religious
yeah,
background. They're not going to, that doesn't communicate what Shinjin is,
no,
unfortunately.
no,
And
exactly, yeah.
I like
And
to
it's tripped
say,
me
or
up and a lot of other people, that it's
yeah,
caused,
yeah.
well, on the one hand, I'm reading this from Shinran and Renyo, but you're
Mhm.
saying, oh, it's just simple faith, and you're just entrust, you just entrust to Amida. Just that's all you do. You just accept it. And it's just simple, because Amida makes you want to
Uh,
trust him. So, it's just faith. It's just, and it's just this over, do you know what I mean? You
mhm.
just make a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
decision. I've been
Totally.
told that you just make a decision. And it's
Ah,
like,
yeah.
what? I just, yeah.
uh,
So,
no,
yeah. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
I've
that's
heard
the
all
problem.
kinds of things like that. And it's like, I
Mm,
see the well-meaning,
right,
it's
right.
well-meaning. You're trying to make it simple for people, but you're
Accessible
actually
for.
distorting the teaching by doing that.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
teaching is actually being distorted,
yeah,
by presenting it that way. And it actually causes people, I think, to give up, or to go away
yeah.
from it,
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
well, obviously can't do this then, because
Right.
I can't, that's not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But what kept me around was, I
Mm,
see it's from Amida. Shinjin arises in me through Amida, through his mind, through him, through his name, through
yeah,
his vow. It's all from, do you see what I mean? It's not
yeah,
anything I'm doing. I'm not
yeah,
making a decision. I'm not
yeah.
making
You're
myself
not making a
believe.
cognitive decision
Yeah.
to, you know, entrust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
not
And
to.
I've done it where, because I've talked to you about that a handful of times, convinced
Mm,
myself I had Shinjin in that oversimplified thing, because I was given that
yeah.
over various oversimplified explanations, and kind of ran with that. And it's like, No, that is not what it's talking
Yeah.
about. It's this is
Yeah.
we're receiving the mind of the Buddha here. We're
Hmm.
receiving, and somehow
Yeah.
we simultaneously, when we have Shinjin, we are the Buddha mind and we're still bamboos. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but we're in the stage of non-retrogression, but we're still bamboos.
Hmm.
And all of our karmic seeds and roots are cut
Hmm.
of future karma, but the plant still
Hmm.
needs, but we still have the rest of the karma, the past and present karma still needs to
Hmm.
kind of run its course
Yeah.
and wither and die, just like the plant. If you cut off its roots, it's still kind of alive, but it
Mm.
won't be for long eventually. And then once you die, do you see what I mean? Like,
Right.
but it's all that all at once. You're
Yeah.
you have the Buddha, you have all that Shinjin is, all those different meanings,
Mm.
all not just Buddha mind, but like the true and real reality and the true.
Mhm.
It's basically saying that Shinjin is nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shinjin is nirvana. Shinjin is the true and real
Yeah.
ultimate
Yeah.
reality and
Yeah.
the Buddha
I
mind
love that
and all
passage.
this other stuff. So it's not just
Mm.
this simple thing, this little thing. It's
Yeah.
it's everything. It's do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and now that I realize that fully,
Mm.
it drives me nuts when I hear that. When I hear that
Yeah.
oversimplified. Do you know what I mean? It's like, are you kidding
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. I know. I know.
So
The
anyway,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine. He's actually the head of the Shinshu community in Switzerland, but Jerome Ducour.
Yeah. Yeah. You've
Um,
mentioned him before. Yeah.
Yeah, he has written, by the way, an excellent book about Shin Buddhism. And in fact, it was published by the Jodo Shinshu International Office, but I guess because people had a hard time getting a hold of it around the world, they actually released the PDF for free to download.
Wow.
And I will send you the link
Yeah.
because
I,
this book I can
we talked about this before,
recommend.
didn't we? Yeah, send me
Um,
the link.
I may
Or
have
maybe you just
brought
mentioned
up
him
this
before.
book.
Maybe you
Yeah,
mentioned him,
yeah,
talked about him before, but didn't mention
yeah.
his link. But yeah, please send me that. Yeah.
I will, because this book addresses. I was looking at the table of contents and it's like, yeah, this is exactly something that Gonkai would love to read about. It like addresses so many of your,
Yeah.
and it is written for a
My
Western
oceanic,
audience. Yeah,
question.
yeah. And Jerome Ducour, he is a scholar of Japanese Buddhism, so he understands the doctrinal and historical background. But he's also a practicing Jodo Shinshu believer and a person of faith, a person of Shinjin. And so I can recommend this book. It's one of the, I can recommend it without any reservation. It's going to be a great read. And but he made a comment that I liked, which was that Jodo Shinshu, the path of salvation that Shinron presents is simple, but not simplistic. And I think there's a distinction there, that I think is when we start to move into things can be oversimplified, as hard to imagine as that may seem. You can oversimplify things to where meaning is actually lost rather than communicated. And so a great example in our tradition of someone who was able to sort of simplify or condense the teaching in a way that was readily understandable, but without diluting it, is Rinyo Shoni in his letters, the Gobunsho. But he also read Shinron and studied and was also a man of Shinjin, and so he had this ability to do this for us. But yeah, I hear you, and I definitely have had the same issues with that term. The calling Shinjin, well, it's simple faith and it's nothing special. Kind
Yeah.
of, especially the nothing special part.
Yeah, they're
It's
nothing
kind of
special.
I don't know that communicates
Exactly.
what
Exactly.
we
It's
are talking about here.
like, how could it be nothing special? It's the mind of the Buddha. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it's nirvana itself. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how could
Yeah.
it be? It just, yeah, and then you just say, and also we're still bamboo, right? There's another part of it where, but they emphasize, oh,
Mm.
so nothing really changes. And I'm like, well, I don't even have Shinjin, and this path has changed me. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The
Yeah.
entrusting to
Yeah.
the path itself. I might not fully
Mm.
entrust, I might not be have settled fully settled
Mhm.
Shinjin. I think I have faith,
Mhm.
faith by degrees, and certainly
Mm.
much more than I did. And I think faith is
Mhm.
arising within me, but like, I've been entrusting to the path. This is another distinction I heard in Shinran. Another thing, it leapt off the page to me, where he says,
Mm.
I can't remember the exact line now, but where he talks about, I entrust to the teaching, practice, and realization, and realization. I don't know if
Mm.
he puts Shinjin in that. I don't think he puts Shinjin in there yet. He says, I entrust to the teaching, practice, and realization of the essence of the Pure Land Way. And that's what
Yeah.
I've been doing. I've been entrusting to that off and
Yeah.
on for 15 years, and much more strongly the
Yeah.
past few years, more consistently the past few years. Um, and just that alone has changed me. Like, that
Mm.
has changed my perspective, my life. I mean, Buddhism's changed me.
Yeah.
Buddhism,
Yeah.
full stop. From the moment I began to really meaningfully look at Buddhism,
Mm.
probably in the late 80s, and then from then on,
Mm.
that changed me.
Yeah.
Buddhism changed me. And then, Jodo Shinshu has changed me. This path is,
Mm.
entrusting to the path has changed me. And then, so we're getting the mind of Buddha, and like, it, do you know what I mean? Like, nothing changes. What?
Yeah.
What? Like, I know we're still a bamboo. I know we're still ignorant. I know it's not, we don't have a special state of consciousness, but we kind of do. It kind of is. Like, if you have no doubt,
Mm.
and you have,
Well,
like,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
to
I
me,
was
like,
gonna say that.
it's like nothing special. Nothing. Oh, it's nothing special.
Yeah.
Nothing really changes. What?
Being free from doubt, from the mind of doubt and calculation, is a
Yeah.
pretty big change
Massive.
for a
Just that
bamboo. And I
alone.
think,
Just that
yeah.
alone. Just that
Yeah.
one thing alone. And then the relief of underlyingly going, I'm going to Pure Land. So, and
Yeah.
there's nothing else for me to do. There's
And
not,
entering,
there never
yeah,
was anything for me
entering
to
the
do, and there's
stage of the
non-retro.
truly settled
Yeah.
now in this life. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big, you know, awakening. So
Yeah.
I think, and not just being free of doubt, but what is called in Jodo Shinshu, and Kobai Sensei talks about this a lot, is um, Shinjin Shoin Shomyo Ho On, which means Shinjin is the true cause, and saying the name is to repay our indebtedness to the Buddha. And this Ho On, this life of what's called, what Rinyu calls Buton Hosha, which means repaying our gratitude and being grateful to Amida Buddha. A life of gratitude.
Yeah.
This is a big
Yeah.
shift. This is going in a whole
Huge.
different direction. And I want to talk about, unfortunately, we won't get to it this time, but I want to talk to you about the story of Binnin, who was a disciple of Shinran Shonin too, because his story is perfectly illustrates when we talk about, Eshin in Buddhism, or, it's sometimes translated conversion, but I don't know that that's necessarily a positive, a good translation. A turning of the mind, a turning of the heart, mind.
Is he the one that, is he the one that he was a monk or a priest or something, and he saw Shinran
Yeah,
being so successful, and he took, and actually he looked at it as though he had stolen his students or something.
Yes,
like
yes. That's
and then
the
he
one.
was like, he had like seething hatred of him.
Yeah.
And he was going to kill him, wasn't he? He was actually
Yeah.
going to,
He attempted many times.
Anyway,
Anyway, but
but
I want
anyway,
to talk
sorry.
about that story because
Yeah.
it's so it's like the entire meaning of Jodo Shinshu and Buddhism in general, but is all like in this story. And in Shinran, why do we love Shinran? It's all in this story. So it's a great story.
Yeah.
And it has a connection to a lot of really important, not just life, but doctrinal ideas and concepts in Jodo Shinshu. So definitely we have to talk about Binnin.
Well, another
his Dharma
aspect.
name was
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish. Yeah, finish.
No, he was named Myohobo, and there Shinran actually mentions him, talks about him in letters that he wrote. So we get like this picture, of it's not only in the biography, the pictorial biography of Shinran, but actually in Shinran's own letters, he talks about this event. So it's really, this is great stuff that I don't think you necessarily know about if you don't really enter like the tradition, the orthodox Jodo Shinshu tradition,
the authentic,
the real deal,
essential path. It and that the way that Shinran reacts and deals with it, and then it's pretty it's pretty amazing. Definitely, we could definitely talk about that. The one other thing, another thing I think of, the benefits in this life, the 10 benefits in this life of people who have who rely utterly on the vow, who have Shinjin with have reliance on immediate without any doubt, Shinjin, the 10 benefits in this life alone, that's pretty major. That's those benefits, if you actually look at them and look and go, that's a real thing that's happening now, and I have that's not just little, you know what I mean? So we could do literally on how Shinjin is not just nothing changes. What? That? Oh, it's no big deal. It's just we could literally do a series of videos on all the ways that it is something special, and it is something incredible. And
I do think there is because I have heard some teachers who say, well, people sometimes expect things to change to a point where it becomes an obstacle to their because, for example, someone might think, well, if I have attained Shinjin, then I will no longer get angry, or I'll no longer have, and that's a mistaken idea. So in that sense, our Bono in Shinran Shonin very clearly states this.
Yes.
Our Bono
do not cease until even the last moment of life. Yes,
Yes,
no,
yes, yes,
they do
exactly.
not see. That's such a
Exactly.
dramatic, that whole
It is
statement.
very, yeah.
His definition of basically of what a bumbo, what he is as a bumbo, and just it's so
Yeah.
dramatic to me. I hear
Yeah.
it, just, but yeah, that on the other hand, you need to emphasize that as well as all this. You
Right.
say
Yeah.
still going to be angry,
So,
still going to be averted,
yeah.
we're still going to be extremely averted, extremely attracted to things. We're going to be, you know what I mean? We're still going to be completely ignorant, obscured. We're not going to see
Mm,
reality. We're not going to, we're just not,
mhm.
yeah, we're still
Yeah.
going to be behaving like idiots and moral idiots and
Yeah.
spiritual
Yeah.
idiots. We're still, yeah, that definitely needs to be emphasized as well,
Mm,
because that's what I mean when I say we're still bummed,
right.
even though this is all going on. We're still
Exactly.
bummed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still until the last moment of life. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so I think there is, when people put it specifically in those, and make it clear that that's what they're talking about, then it is, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. But sometimes, like you said, it gets taken to like this whole nother, where faith is nothing special and it's just very simple, and
yeah.
then from someone who is interested in this tradition, and they may be looking at Zen, or other schools. If we don't have anything to offer, then
What's
that might be a problem for people who are asking, what is the benefit of me following this path? And of course, for Shinran, I mean, the primary core benefit, and like you mentioned, the 10 benefits in this light, but those all kind of come down to Ginsho Joju, which is entering into the state of non-retrogression, the state of assurance of nirvana in this life, right? And those benefits are all expressions of that. So again, like you said, that is a big shift. That is a big thing. It's
yeah,
not nothing special. It's like the point of being born as a human being is to
yeah,
encounter this. So
yeah.
yeah, I have been very
Like we
dissatisfied
have
in the
it's the
past.
same as bodhisattvas. That's this. We have this.
Yeah,
We achieve the
not
state.
bodhisattvas. We're equal with the Buddha.
Well, yeah,
Shinran
and the
says
Buddha. Yeah, we have the
we
Buddha
are
mind, and
equal with Maitreya Buddha. We are
oh yeah,
equal
yeah.
to
Before in
Buddhas.
his next life.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Of course, yeah. It's so
Not even
you can't.
bodhisattvas. We're
It,
equal to the Buddhas, Shinran
yeah,
says. So I have been very kind of disappointed in the past with teachers or people who have used those kinds of kind of that language, because it does tend to kind of undervalue
yeah.
what is really the most
It is.
valuable
And
thing.
I think that's one of the dangers of the foibles of a fundamentalist approach is
Mm,
things get
yeah,
oversimplified,
yeah,
things get overdone, over yeah, and
yeah.
just it becomes something else.
Well, and also the focus shifts from the Dharma onto like all these other things, like
Yeah.
political things and
Yep.
social things, and
Yep.
how many members do we have,
Yeah,
and all of this
exactly.
other stuff,
Exactly.
And so yeah, I totally agree with you, and yeah, this was a
And
great
I've seen it at both
conversation.
ends of the spectrum. I remember I was in one group
Mm.
where it was kind of very left wing, and I've been in another Sangha
Yeah,
where it was very right wing, and and it was just like that stuff has nothing to do, and that's what I would always say. Like, how
yeah,
does that have anything to do with
yeah,
the teaching? How does that, you know?
yeah. Free us from birth and death.
Yeah, exactly. It's about this. It's about the, it's not about, we're not about, Buddhism is not about progressing to some utopia,
Mm,
and it's not about preserving some traditional way of life, and it's
Mm,
not about trying to bring things back to some renaissance, or to
no.
build back better, or to make
Yeah.
samsara great again. it's it's about suffering and the end of suffering. That's what
Yeah.
it's about,
Yeah.
and uh
Yeah.
so it
Totally.
just, yeah. And I, as a Buddhist living in, as a
Mm,
Buddhist bamboo, living in samsara, living in Mappo, like I just, even seeing the world the way that we do, it's hard for me to have really strong political or social views,
mm, yeah.
because it, you just are like, well, it's kind of all for naught. It's kind of, karma is flowing at this point. And there's not much, what I mean? People's karma is what it
Yeah.
is. There's not too much you're gonna be. You do need to try to make the world better and do, you know what I mean, and do your part. But like,
Mm.
it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's a whole argument, or argument, I guess, or discussion around engaged Buddhism, so
Yeah,
called,
indeed. Yeah, yeah.
and its relation to Jodo Shinshu and so on, and that's a whole
That's another thing I
nother
want to talk about,
topic.
actually, at some point. I've sort of
Yeah,
brought that
yeah.
up. That's part of that engaged Buddhism stuff, is part of the thing where I said I'd like to talk about sort
Mhm.
of the morality,
Oh,
civic
right.
duty,
Yeah,
civic
yeah.
duty, political stuff, all that stuff. I do want to see what the teaching actually
Mm.
says about that from a Jodo
Yeah, yeah.
Shinshu teaching
Sure, for sure.
standpoint, not provisional
Right.
teachings about from Buddhism that were for another
Mm.
age and time,
Yeah,
and they were right for then, but they're not. It's just not.
yeah. I do
Uh,
know a little bit about this topic, so I can definitely
yeah.
share, what
Anyways,
I know,
yeah.
and then
Anyway,
that'll be
sorry.
an
Continue with, you were
conversation.
saying your thought about the engaged Buddhism.
Oh no, I was going to
Yes.
say that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, yeah. We can include
um,
that though in that
yeah,
topic,
we
because
should.
that
We can
it's
include the
something I've gone
engaged.
back and forth with. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Let's talk about, when we talk about you had a question about precepts, and then
Yes,
um
precepts, and
and also, yeah,
yeah,
I think
it's
that's
all
all kind
tied
of
together.
tied
The
together.
10,
So
and tied in there is uh, the 10 teachings of kingship that the Buddha gave, the 10 principles
mm,
for the leader,
yeah, yeah.
something like that. I can't remember what they're called, but they're the
Okay.
10 sort of principles that a leader is supposed to embody.
Yeah.
And that has been that's a
Mm,
guiding thing for me when I think about, all these things. That's, though this is the
yeah.
ideal, but so what, how do we
Right.
pragmatically kind of embody that and try to,
Yeah.
and anyway, that's what, for me, a lot of times it comes back to, is just pragmatic kind of, okay, you have to be pragmatic now. We're in Mappo.
Yeah. We
Do
do
the,
have to keep in mind
yeah,
that we are in the Mappo, and the Buddha
deep
said that his
Mappo.
teachings,
We're in deep
deep
Mappo.
Mappo, yeah. The Buddha said that his teaching would be like it would burn brightest before the end.
Yeah.
He said it would be like a torch. That was how a torch burns brightly before it is extinguished.
Yeah.
So, and if you look at how Buddhism has really spread around the globe, and even through the internet and recently, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think we can definitely say, like, it is burning brightly,
Oh yeah.
but it's also, we're reaching, the Mappo is
We're circling that drain. We're just starting to, we're starting to go in.
yeah. Um, yeah. Well, I guess we could
Anyway,
wrap it up here, but for our next, I
yes,
will be able to talk, or to meet, or to Zoom on next Sunday, so same
excellent,
time. And
fantastic.
then,
Yeah,
because we didn't get to it today, I thought we could discuss some of the things about Tawny Show that were covered in Kobai Sensei's lecture,
oh
because
yes,
there's some
yeah, we
great
still need
points.
to.
Yeah, we still need to get to that. So I can prepare some material for that. And then also, at some point, I really do want to introduce to you the a little bit of the chanting.
Yes.
And I have a great, what we can start with is what I found is San Butsuge, which is from the larger sutra. It's actually a hymn in the larger sutra. And this is I think I sent you the link to the Gardenia Buddhist Church service book. Yeah. So we can use that. And then it's very simple chant. So there's nothing complicated. Yeah. There's no, so that would be a great, place to start. And then, I mean, there's so much to discuss. It's like, it's just endless, it's like every time we meet, it's like, wow, there's so much more to do.
Exactly.
Which is a good thing, and, it never ends.
Can I say this, coming back to the early question, first question, the thing I raised, the recurrent doubt, doubt there, the recurrent sort of barrier. One thing I want to say is, I don't know if I mentioned this in our sessions. I've mentioned it in one of my videos, I think in one of my individual videos, but that sometimes one thing I've realized through this real, authentic, true Dharma dialogue, deep listening, kind of the way you're meant to be doing it, is sometimes just raising the questions, just talking about the doubt and raising the questions resolves it, even without there being any kind of particular answer to it. So I'm just going to keep raising it, because I think Amida, some of this stuff, all of it, it's all Amida, and isn't it? Even if you do answer a question for me, it's going to be Amida that's resolving the doubt, resolving the question, ultimately. And so what I'm saying is, I just, as long as I just keep raising them, just
absolutely,
still here. This is still here. Might not be something we can thrash out and talk about fully, but it's still there. And sometimes, like I said, there's so much of that. There's so much that has of questions and doubts that we haven't particularly kind of come to any kind of resolved, response or answer, a specific thing from the teachings. How does the Jodo Shinju teaching address this? How does Shinran address this? Renyo address? We might not have for every single thing that has, but it's just resolved by the act of doing this. Like, Amida is, inconceivably doing it.
It's like the sticks and twigs and leaves in the water, and then the water flows and the
sorts
sticks
them
and
out.
the leaves get swept away, but
off to the side.
Just the water flowing. The water,
or they just get off to the side and they're done. They're off. They're just stuck in the side and they're gone. The water's flowing. Yeah.
Which is why Renyo says, speak up. Don't just stay silent. Whatever you have, Renyo actually says, whatever you have on your mind, just say it. To his audience. That's what he says. That's why it's so important.
I definitely am. There's nothing I'm.
And I will definitely. I'll think about your, the question as well. And I think there may be some. I may be able to find
the part of it that I get the reason for the 14 questions not being answered. I get that. I get it's about the suffering and the end of suffering. Pull the arrow out. I get all of that. I'm a bamboo calculating mind, so there's no point in trying to figure it out. We think in temporal terms, space-time, temporal terms, so we're not going to get, it's original or not original, or like we don't get that it's not that. I get all that, but it's still that other side of it. Isn't that a convenient way to cut off the question?
Isn't that a convenient excuse?
to self-censor? Isn't that a convenient way to get people to, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the part that you won't let go. It's just that skeptic monkey mind, man. It's just it's tenacious with that one. It's with a lot of things. It's very tenacious. Anyway, but anyway, I just want to say that sometimes I don't think it's always going to be us,
Mm,
being able to find teachings that result like it.
right,
Just
right.
things are going to
Yeah,
get handled by Amida through
good
just,
point.
yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so
It's the working. Well, that's what's so important about true listening, Chomon, is that it's not our figuring things out
Yeah.
and resolving our doubts. It's other power. It's Amida's vow. It's Amida's power, the Tathagata's power. That is the power of the Dharma, right? The Dharma is what is the water that's flowing, and
yeah,
and yeah. So that good point. Good point.
exactly. So, right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for, I know there's
Yeah,
so many things we want to try to get to, but
I know. Every time it's there's so much to talk about.
but I need to speak
Good
up
thing.
as well.
Yeah,
These
that's
things,
the most important part. So,
these
all right,
niggling doubts, niggling questions.
niggling. Yes.
They're the worst. These
Well,
ones, those
in the
ones,
image
those
of the
tenacious.
river,
What's that?
in the image of the stream, you have the leaves and the sticks, but then you always have that one little water bug that just won't let go of the rock.
Yeah.
He's like hanging on.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there for the longest time. And it's like,
Yeah.
come back. I was just sitting by the stream, come back. Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. You know what I mean? I've seen that before. Actual,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And you're like a month later, oh yeah, it's still caught on that same rock, that stick. It's very true. That's exactly what it's like. Exactly. Anyway. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kyokan, as always.
You're welcome.
So
Thank
much
you,
appreciated.
as always. All right.
All right.
And
So we'll
we'll
see you
talk
next,
again. Yeah, next week, same time, same place.
same bat time, same bat channel.
Yes.
Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. All right. Take care. Have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Namo Amida
Namo
Butsu.
Amida Butsu.